The courthouse steps were slick with rain, but Jermaine Parker didn't flinch. 17, lanky, with storm-dark eyes and the stillness of someone who'd seen too much, he stood beneath the looming archway of the municipal building like a statue carved from defiance. Clutched in his damp backpack was a flash drive that could bring a city to its knees. He glanced up at the stone columns, then toward the third-floor window, where the man who had tried to ruin his life still sat in judgment. Judge Harold Abernathy, a name that carried fear like a gavel crack through the streets of Eastwood. Abernathy had ruled this district court for 2 decades, hiding his hatred behind robes and rhetoric. His courtroom was a crucible where black boys were branded criminals before their names were even spoken. Jermaine had watched it happen to his brother Marcus, 15, charged as an adult, 10 years for a stolen phone. No jury. Just Abernathy. Cold. Final. Efficient. That day, Jermaine had learned silence was survival. But survival wasn't justice. The truth began in whispers, papers left unattended in chambers, recordings misfiled, a careless moment here, a boastful one there. Jermaine, quiet and watchful, had spent his weekends cleaning the courthouse as part of his probation. He kept his head down, but his phone on. When he overheard Abernathy laughing with D.A. Clifton about how they couldn't have these animals thinking they could rise, something cracked inside him. He recorded it. And that was only the beginning. He hadn't told anyone except Maya, his childhood friend and the only person who knew what he was planning. Maya, fierce and brilliant, had been accepted to Yale on a full scholarship but deferred it to stay in Eastwood, said she couldn't leave while kids like Jermaine were still getting chewed up by a crooked system. Together, they combed through court records, digital files, transcripts, some altered, others destroyed. Maya hacked into county archives while Jermaine worked the ground, gathering affidavits, testimonies, and stories. The pattern was undeniable. Abernathy wasn't just biased, he was orchestrating a system of suppression, in league with Clifton and a network of judges across the state. But now, everything was on the line. Jermaine had received a subpoena that morning, he was being dragged into court under false pretenses. Witness tampering, they claimed. Maya told him not to go, warned him Abernathy was trying to erase him like he'd done to so many others. But Jermaine wasn't backing down. If I disappear, he'd told her, release everything. No redactions. He stepped inside the courthouse. The air was heavy with silence, the kind that came before a storm. The hearing room was near empty. No media. No public. Just Judge Abernathy seated high, his robe a shroud, and a federal agent in a gray suit at the back, watching. Jermaine walked in with his hands in his pockets. He didn't flinch when Abernathy looked at him like filth beneath his shoe. He didn't speak when the bailiff ordered him to sit. ChatGPT. Then the judge began. This court finds that the witness, Jermaine Parker, has repeatedly interfered with legal proceedings by spreading false information about members of this court. Abernathy's voice was iron. As such, we are initiating proceedings to detain him pending a formal investigation. Jermaine stood. You're lying, he said, his voice clear, strong. And I have proof. He pulled the flash drive from his pocket and held it up. I've spent the last year collecting evidence of systemic corruption in this court, altered sentences, racial bias, off-the-record deals with D.A. Clifton. It's all here. And it's already been uploaded to 5 independent sources. Abernathy's face went pale. For the first time in years, the mask cracked. The federal agent in the back stood slowly. But before he could speak, Abernathy slammed his gavel. Bailiff, seize him. The bailiff hesitated. That's when Maya walked in. She carried a laptop under her arm and a portable speaker in her hand. Too late, Judge, she said, locking eyes with him. Everyone's watching. She hit play. Abernathy's voice echoed through the chamber. We'll keep them in line, just like the others. Who's going to stop us? Some kid. The federal agent stepped forward. That's enough. Abernathy stood. This is a setup. But the agent was already reading Miranda rights. It should have ended there. Jermaine should have felt victorious. But as Abernathy was led away, he turned, smiling. You think I'm the only one? You think this ends with me? 2 hours later, Jermaine sat in Maya's apartment, silence stretched between them. The files were out. News outlets were reporting it. A sitting judge arrested on conspiracy and civil rights violations. It felt like justice. But then Maya's phone buzzed. A restricted number. She answered, and froze. She put the call on speaker. A distorted voice spoke. Calm. Measured. You've made your move. Impressive. But you exposed only one piece of the board. The king is still watching. The line went dead. Jermaine stood slowly. Maya turned to him. Outside, the rain began to fall again. The apartment was dead quiet, except for the low hum of Maya's laptop. Jermaine paced back and forth across the hardwood floor, each step louder than the last, his hands balled into fists. That voice, it wasn't Abernathy. It was colder, older. Calculated. And it didn't sound surprised. Not one bit. The message wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Maya sat on the couch, back rigid, eyes scanning lines of code and encryption logs from her servers. Someone accessed the mirror site 30 minutes ago. Not to download. To edit. But we had it locked down. Jermaine stopped pacing. Who? I don't know yet. But it wasn't random. They knew exactly where to look, buried metadata, court records going back 30 years. They didn't wipe it. They replaced it. Same case numbers. Same formats. But the corruption's scrubbed clean. They are covering tracks. No, she said slowly. They were expecting this. Jermaine sat beside her, his throat dry. Abernathy was never the top. He was just a piece. Maya nodded. And whoever this king's, they just made their first move. That night, they didn't sleep. By dawn, they had isolated the breach, a deep signal bouncing through a military-grade proxy, originating from a government building that no longer existed on paper. Maya looked at the IP address and laughed without humor. They're not hiding. Not really. They just don't think we matter enough to stop them. Jermaine stared out the window. The city was waking up, unaware that a war was breaking beneath its surface. Then we hit back harder. At school, Jermaine was met with stares. Some admiring, others scared. Someone had spray-painted snitch across his locker. But his teachers didn't call on him. They barely looked at him. Word had spread. You don't cross the system. Not in Eastwood. Later that afternoon, a man in a charcoal suit appeared outside the school gates. No badge. No name. Just cold eyes and a soft smile. Jermaine knew instantly, this was no cop. He walked right up to him. Jermaine Parker, the man said smoothly, you're interfering with forces you don't understand. Take the win. Let it go. Jermaine's jaw tensed. You threatened a 17-year-old on school grounds. The man stepped closer. I'm warning you. You saw what happened to Abernathy. That wasn't justice. That was a message. He became expendable. You won't get the same courtesy. And then he handed Jermaine a folded slip of paper and walked away. Jermaine opened it. One line. Your father's file has been reopened. His chest went hollow. His father. Gone 10 years. Framed for armed robbery, sentenced by Judge Abernathy. A case so airtight no one questioned it, except Jermaine. The idea that someone could twist that knife again, dig through those old wounds, chilled him. At Maya's house, he tossed the paper on the table. They're using him against me. Maya didn't blink. Then we turn it on them. They're sloppy when they're arrogant. They think legacy cases are safe. They'll never expect you to go backward. Jermaine nodded slowly. If we find out how they planted evidence back then, we expose that. Show it was never just Abernathy. It's a whole machine. 3 days later, they got their first break. A retired stenographer named Mrs. Langford, half-blind, wheezing through oxygen tubes, had once worked under Judge Abernathy and kept handwritten copies of every transcript she was told to destroy. Maya found her in a nursing home under a false name. At first, she wouldn't speak. Said they'd come for her family if she did. But Jermaine didn't beg. He simply handed her a photo. His father's. Her eyes watered. That boy didn't belong in prison, she whispered. They rigged that whole trial. Evidence planted before it was logged. I saw the real footage. Then they made me type a version that fit their story. She handed them a faded file, marked, for the record, the 14th of August 15, with a red chess piece drawn on the top corner. A black king. Maya inhaled sharply. That's their symbol. I've seen this on encrypted drives from the court archives. They're branding their own lies. Jermaine held the file like it burned. They returned home that night, loaded the footage to a private server, and prepared a drop to every journalist in the city. But when they hit send, error. File not found. The footage was gone. Not corrupted. Not deleted. Just gone. Maya's face went pale. Jermaine's phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo popped up on the screen. It was his house. The front door was open. He bolted out the door, sprinted 6 blocks. When he reached the porch, it was worse than he imagined. Drawers overturned. Documents scattered. Family photos shredded. And on the living room wall, spray painted in thick, black strokes. Checkmate. He sank to his knees. Somewhere inside, a storm was forming, slow and seismic. He had drawn blood from a monster, and now it was awake. He called Maya. No answer. He called again. Still nothing. He raced back to her apartment. The door was ajar. Inside, the laptop was gone. The walls were bare. The only thing left behind was a torn page on the desk. One line scrawled in red ink. She made her move. Now she's ours. Jermaine stumbled back, heart thundering. His breath caught in his throat. For the first time, he didn't feel brave. He felt hunted. And the king? He wasn't just watching anymore. He was playing. And Maya had just been taken off the board. They thought they'd ended it. But the real game had only just begun. The rain came down in sheets, pounding against the windows like the ticking of a clock counting down. Jermaine sat alone in Maya's darkened apartment, the power cut, the silence oppressive. Her scent still lingered in the air, lavender and static. Her laptop, her backup drives, everything that mattered was gone. Except the torn note left behind. She made her move. Now she's ours. He hadn't slept in 2 days. His hands trembled as he clutched a photo of them from the school protest, before all of this. Before they had poked the hive. Before the king had come out of the shadows. He closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe. This wasn't over. Maya wouldn't want grief. She'd want revenge. But he had nothing. No proof. No team. No way to find her. Until the door creaked open behind him. He spun around. A man stepped into the room. Older. Clean-shaven. Tan trench coat soaked from the storm. He closed the door behind him and raised his hands. Name's Elijah Ward. I'm the one Maya reached out to 6 months ago. Jermaine stood slowly, skeptical. Prove it. Elijah reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive wrapped in electrical tape. She said if anything happened to her, I'd know what to do with this. He paused. She called you the sharpest mind she ever met. Said you'd figure it out if I gave you the last piece. Jermaine took it with shaking hands. Plugged it into Maya's emergency laptop, the only device they hadn't touched, hidden in a floorboard beneath her couch. The drive contained one file. A video. 30 seconds long. Maya. Disheveled. In what looked like a basement. If you're seeing this, it means they took me. Good. That was the plan. Listen, Jermaine, what we found, it goes deeper than Judge Abernathy. Deeper than courtrooms. The Black King isn't a man. He's a network. A fraternity inside the justice system. Judges, prosecutors, even defense attorneys. They rig cases for profit, silence whistleblowers, erase dissent. Abernathy was their face, but the real mind is a federal contractor called Dominion Ledger. She coughed. Blood at the corner of her mouth. They're using me to bait you. Don't come for me. Finish it. Burn them down. Make them choke on their own secrets. The screen went black. Jermaine's throat clenched. Elijah leaned against the wall. She gave herself up so you could take the shot. Jermaine whispered, Dominion Ledger. Elijah nodded. Classified contracts. Fake shell firms. But they own the servers used to archive every federal court recording east of the Mississippi. If we can breach that, every case they've touched falls apart. Jermaine sat in stunned silence. You think we can? Elijah cracked a rare smile. With her code? We will. They worked through the night. Jermaine recompiled Maya's encryption algorithm, fusing it with Elijah's backdoor into Dominion's secondary server. Every firewall they passed revealed more rot, doctored court audio, redacted transcripts, missing footage. They weren't just framing the innocent. They were auctioning off guilty verdicts. And then they found it. A file labeled Kingmaker Protocol. Inside, judge recruitment videos. Secret meetings. A ledger of payments. And one name stood out. Jermaine Parker Sr. Jermaine's heart stopped. The date on the file, 4 months before his father's arrest. It wasn't a setup. It was a recruitment. His father had refused. They didn't just frame him. They punished him. Jermaine backed away from the screen, shaking. Elijah reached out gently. Now you know. Now you really know. He wiped his face, tears hot on his cheeks. They ruined everything. For honor. For truth. He looked up. So let's give them a reckoning. That morning, they launched The King's Fall, an anonymous data leak across hundreds of news outlets, legal blogs, whistleblower platforms. Within hours, the internet erupted. Footage of Judge Abernathy signing false warrants. Prosecutors laughing as sentences were pre-written. The Kingmaker ledger with names, dates, and dollar signs. By sundown, 4 judges had resigned. 2 U.S. attorneys were in hiding. And Dominion Ledger's headquarters in D.C. had gone completely dark. But Jermaine knew better. This wasn't a victory. It was an escalation. That night, Elijah got a call. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. A cold voice replied, "Cute trick. We'll call it your opening move." Jermaine leaned in. "Where's Maya?" The voice paused. Then, "She's still alive. For now. If you want to see her again, you'll stop this crusade. Otherwise..." There was a click. Then audio played. Maya. Screaming. And then, silence. Jermaine crushed the phone in his hand. Elijah whispered, "They're not going down without blood." Jermaine stared at the computer screen. His father's name. Maya's screams. The list of the corrupt glowing back at him. He had 2 choices. Disappear into the shadows like so many before him. Or turn the king's board upside down. He opened Maya's code editor and began typing. "They think this is the end." He looked up at Elijah. "No. This is just check." 3 weeks later, Jermaine stood at the base of the Supreme Court steps, a hoodie pulled over his head, crowds flooding behind him, reporters, protesters, and survivors alike. The air vibrated with chants, "Justice for the buried. End the king's rule." The movement was no longer just a leak. It had a name now, the Black Crown Uprising. The files had triggered Senate hearings, DOJ raids, and the immediate disbarment of 32 federal judges. The Kingmaker Protocol was now front-page news. But none of it mattered to Jermaine. Not yet. Not until he saw Maya walk through a door again. Beside him, Elijah clutched a briefcase. Inside it, the final blow. The names of the financiers. The ones above even Dominion. The donors. The king's true royalty. "We drop this," Elijah said, "and there's no coming back." Jermaine stared at the building before him. Justice, it read in bold marble. And yet he'd learned justice was never stone. It was glass. Fragile. Breakable. He nodded once. "We break it." But before Elijah could move, Jermaine's burner buzzed. One word lit the screen, "Live." His heart stuttered. He opened the link. It was Maya. Tied to a chair. Blood on her temple. A single camera facing her. And a figure stepped into frame. Black-gloved. Hooded. "Jermaine Parker," the distorted voice began, "we told you the rules. You brought this upon her. You think exposing the king ends the game? You were never the player. Just a piece." Jermaine's hands clenched. Maya raised her head slowly. Her eyes met the camera. Even through the pain, her defiance burned. Do it, she whispered. Whatever it costs. Finish it. Then the screen went dark. Jermaine didn't speak. Didn't blink. He simply turned to Elijah. Send it. Elijah opened the case, pulled the drive, and passed it to a courier already waiting, part of their chain, prearranged. In exactly 6 minutes, every major outlet in the country would receive the truth: senators laundering campaign money through Dominion, Supreme Court justices receiving coded memos before controversial rulings, a secret memo titled Judicial Influence Through Adjudicated Partnerships, signed by the sitting Attorney General. It would be a nuclear detonation. As the courier vanished into the chaos, Jermaine turned away. They wanted a war, he said. Now they have one. That night, they moved to a secure location, a safe house 3 floors beneath an abandoned museum in Georgetown. Elijah patched into global news feeds. Chaos reigned. The president had called an emergency address. A special counsel was forming. Whistleblowers were flooding in from every level of government. Even the FBI director resigned live on air. But Maya was still missing. And Jermaine was done playing by rules. They traced the stream. Signal triangulation. Spoofed Reuters. Encrypted layers. And at the core, one node that pulsed strangely. A dormant military satellite. Accessed only by legacy clearance. Elijah, Jermaine whispered, I think they're not just inside the justice system. Elijah's face darkened. They're inside the intelligence community. Jermaine leaned closer. That means there's another level. A king above the king. Suddenly, a knock at the door. Gun drawn, Elijah approached. A voice called through the concrete. It's me. Jermaine froze. That voice. He rushed to the door, cracked it. And Maya stumbled in, half-conscious, blooded, but alive. Jermaine caught her before she fell. She clutched a flash drive in her hand. Didn't let them break me, she rasped. Found something. Bigger than we thought. He pulled her into a chair, eyes wide. What is it? She held up the drive. I found the Black Knight. Elijah blinked. The what? She smiled grimly. The king is just a figurehead. There's a second protocol. A failsafe. If the system collapses, he activates the contingency. A digital blackout. Martial law. Erasure of all digital whistleblower files. That's why they let me live. They were buying time. Jermaine felt his lungs crush. So we're not at the end. Maya nodded. We're at the beginning. Outside, sirens wailed. Across the country, arrests were made. But Jermaine knew, true justice wasn't headlines. It was survival. It was truth clawed from rot. It was not giving up when the king sent knights. He opened the drive. The file read, The Knight's Path. And beneath it, location logged, Site 51C. A government black site. One known only to those who never spoke of it again. Jermaine looked to Maya. To Elijah. This isn't over. He turned to the screen, eyes burning with resolve. If the king ruled the courts, he said, then the knight rules the silence. He clicked the file. And somewhere, deep underground, a camera blinked to life, watching them back.